All right, can everybody hear me? All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Deshay Beckton, and I'm the Career Development Coordinator here at Cape Fear Community College. In Career Services, we've decided to start some employability skills training sessions to assist students with the preparation for job search. So our first session, we'll talk about resumes and cover letters. And to facilitate that session, I have Ashley Wells, who's the Assistant Dean in Engagement and Impact at UNCW. So Ashley, at this time, I'll turn it over to you. If you want to give a little bit more of a descriptive background, feel free to do so, and then we can dive into the presentation.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Deshay, for having me and inviting me into this space. I have been working with you for a while, and so I'm glad that we can continue in this space as well. So, hi, everyone. Happy to be here with you. Yes, my name is Ashley Wells, and I do work for UNCW. I work in the College of Health and Human Services. And I love interacting with people in this way, which is probably why my job is in community engagement. So I am super happy to be here. I want to let you know that I am happy for you to use the chat box if you need me to slow down, repeat something. If you want to give a thumbs up because you particularly like something that we're going over, that's fine too. But definitely use that tool to communicate with me if you would like throughout the presentation. So resumes and cover letters, I really like talking about these because there's a process involved. When we get down to it and really start uncovering things about resumes and cover letters, there's kind of a formula that you can follow that kind of makes it easy, and it takes a little bit of the stress off of figuring out what exactly do you put in these things. So we're going to go through this presentation. Please ask questions. If you have tips or tools that have worked for you that you think would be great to share with the audience, please put that in the chat too. We are all experts here in some form or fashion, and have experiences of our own, so I would like for us to share those when appropriate. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So what is a resume? Well, we kind of know the formal definition of a resume. It's a formal document that we put together that's factual, and it outlines our employment history. It highlights our skills. It highlights our qualifications for a particular job that we are applying for. And it really is kind of a quick way to look at someone's full history of employment. Most requested document in any job search. I'm not sure that I've ever been involved in a job search that hasn't required a resume. But some of the things that we don't talk about as much are thinking about the resume in terms of your first impression to an employer. This is kind of like your calling card or your business card, that one thing that you give to people that kind of has all your information on it. Your resume is that very same thing. So I like to tell folks to think of it as a marketing tool. Use it to market yourself and your skills and your experiences. Think about it as sort of your 30-second commercial, advertising exactly what you can do, who you are, where you've been. And that kind of makes it a little bit more fun when you think about it that way. How can we really market ourselves and our experiences? So the resume really is supposed to be a quick summary of the history of and skills, education, employment, all of those things that you want a potential future employer to know about you and how you're connected to the job that you are applying for. So here's where we get into that, a little bit of that formulaic thinking about what goes into a resume. Well, most definitely you want to make sure that you put your name pretty bold so that they know who they're getting, then they can match it up with the application itself. It's a really good idea to have an email address that is professional. So let's just say you're a fan of the Georgia Bulldogs. I probably wouldn't put my email in there that says Georgia Bulldogs fan 99 at Gmail. But what I would put in there is Ashley_Wells at Gmail. So you want to make sure that your email address is professional to you and your name and is something that can be closely associated with you. A good phone number is a good idea to include, as well as your LinkedIn URL, or if you have your own website, anything for employers to find you on a professional social site is always a good idea to have in there for folks to reach you really quickly. A resume can also include a brief summary of your qualifications or your objective in the job search. So this can be something that details a couple of the things that you're really good at, a couple of the experiences that you have had that make you a good match for that particular position. But just a very quick, short blurb really about who you are, what your qualifications are related to that position. And then of course you'll dive into your work history. And so the work history is where you will sort of detail who have you worked for, how long did you work there. So it's a good idea to have the length of time. I typically prefer to do month and year. So January 2020 through January 2021. That way the employer can look really quickly and see how long you've been at each of those organizations. You will want to include your education background, whatever that is, if it is a degree, if it's a training completion, if it's a certificate, a workshop attendance, anything that's really relevant to your education and obtaining a specific skill set, you want to put in that education section. A lot of times it's a good idea, depending on the job, to include your volunteer experience, particularly if it's relevant to that position that you're applying for. So if you are applying for a job, let's just say in K-12, P-12 education, and you have a background in volunteering, doing tutoring, let's just say on the weekends or the evenings, pretty good idea to put that volunteer experience in that section so that they can see that you have a real tie to that position that you are applying for. It also helps because it helps people, employers, to see that you have been involved in the community if that is an important piece of the position that you're applying for. And then finally, skills and attributes. And so these typically, I have seen them come at the very beginning of a resume. So if we were to think about your resume as having your contact information up top, followed by your blurb of why you're qualified for the position, your objective statement. I typically then, after that section, see skills and attributes. So some of those very specific skill sets that you have, maybe you're really good at database management, project management, any things that are really relatable skill sets that you've acquired, facilitation, repair, things of that nature. And then your attributes are those things that you have sort of developed over time that talk about sort of your approach to work. Are you dedicated? Are you on time? Are you a diligent worker? Do you have attention to detail? Some folks are really attuned to details, and some folks are really big picture systems thinker. And so those are some attributes that would be really important for you to include in that resume as well. Just gives a little bit more depth to those short blurbs that you're putting in your resume about those job experiences. So let's see. So common types of resumes. There are 3 that we'll go over today, and this really just depends on the job that you're applying to, your own particular history or lived experience in the workforce, and so you can really choose what fits best for that particular position. So a chronological resume really focuses on your recent work history. It lists your positions in reverse chronological order with the most recent position at the top and then going to the older positions that you've held before that. So you would start with where you are now, where were you before that job, where were you before that job, where were you before that job. Typically, we say the cutoff is around 10 years, to not go past that if you have more than that. But again, it depends a little bit on the job and what you're going for with the employer. So chronological resume is just point in time. Here's where I am now and what I've been doing. Here's where I was before that, and so on. A functional resume emphasizes your experience, right, related to that job that you're applying to. So you're going to see a professional summary. You're going to see a section about those skills that you have, and your work experience is going to be organized, not by chronological order, but really by how closely the position that you're applying to relates, the positions that you've had relate to the one that you're applying to. So you may have a section, instead of I worked at company so-and-so for a particular time, you'll say, this is all of my experience around project management. This is all of my experience around clinical nursing. This is all of my experience around database management. This is all of my experience around early childhood education. So the functional resume really highlights those professional skills and experiences that you've had around some of those bigger things that the job description might be asking for that you want to highlight instead of a chronological format. And then the combination resume is really just combining professional summary and skills section of your functional resume with the work experience of the chronological resume. And so it's kind of mashing those two together. And again, it will just depend on your own background, the job that you're applying to. But those are different types of resumes, and you can pick and choose which one is going to work best for you in your particular job search. So a big thing that employers look for, and that I look for when I'm hiring too, is it easy to read? So I really look at design and formatting of resumes. I do not prefer pictures on my resumes, and I don't typically prefer resumes that have lots of color or lots of like different sections or graphics on them. When me in particular, when I'm doing a review on resumes, I want to go straight down the page, and I want to get all the information about you that I can and not be distracted. So design and formatting is actually really important. So it's best to use an easy to read font. 12-point is recommended. That's just really easy to read on the eyes. You want to make sure that you're not cramming a bunch of stuff together, that you're not putting so much stuff that it just looks like one big page of writing back to back to back. You want to make sure there's some white space. So embrace the white space between sections. Make it easy for the eye to read and know when you're going from one section to another. When I'm transitioning from your education to your work history, or from your summary to the list of your skills and attributes. So embrace that white space as much as you can, and really keep the resume to 1 to 2 pages max. That really is kind of standard format for resumes these days. Again, don't go overboard with design and decoration. That does take away from what we really want to see, which is who are you and what do you bring to the table. I want to know all about your experiences, your skill set, and so I don't want to be distracted from that. Try not to save your resume PDF unless the application or the employer specifically says that it accepts that. You want to make sure that you have it in Word or some other file that will be accepted by that particular application system. And usually in the job description section, it will tell you what to submit and how to submit it. So design and formatting, super important. Make sure it's easy to read, pleasing to the eye, not distracting, and that it includes all the things in there that you want to include in a succinct manner. So really short and sweet, but specific, that someone can just read straight through and have a great understanding of who you are and what do you bring to the table related to that position. So we're going to look at these two, and I'm not sure if you can see these really well, but I'm having to squint because my eyes are old. But these are two resumes samples that we have here. And so if you are so inclined to use the chat box, let us know what things stand out to you that, that you like, that you think they're doing really well. Is there something that you see that you don't like or think would be great to include in a resume? So I'm going to pause for just a few seconds and let you look at these and maybe enter some ideas in the chat box about what you see between these two. All right. Okay, here we go. So we have one participant who has said the font is distracting on the left side where it says your name, but easy to read. So I agree, that font is a little bit distracting. Typically I see Times New Roman or Calibri or Arial used, but I agree with that. Nadia's font is easier to read than the left one, so yes, that seems to be definitely a theme coming up. Yeah, it's hard to read this one on the left, and it's a nice resume. It's got good things in it, right? But that font is just a little bit distracting to me. I also wonder if you see how they've done it differently on each one, but each of them have really distinct sections laid out for their resumes. So particularly for Nadia's, you see she has it in bold, you know, education is here, professional experience is here, volunteer experience is there. So I really go down the line, down the page, and know exactly what section I'm looking at. The same with the one on the left here. You know, they have their qualifications, software that they know how to use, that they've had experience with, education and experience. One of the things that would be really helpful is to say, I'm trying to see this one on the side. They do have, it looks like this one on the left does have where they worked, what their title was, and the year. So that's great. So you want to make sure that you have that so folks know what your history has been and at what time have you been in the workforce. That's also really important to know in terms of skill development. Should the dates in Nadia's resume be aligned to the right? Good question. Definitely a preference thing. So I have seen and done resumes like this. If you're going to separate in this kind of way the date from the title, so having a separation like that, definitely make sure everything is lined up. All the dates are lined up on one side. So it's fine to have them aligned right or left, but just make sure everything is aligned right or left if it's a date. That way it looks really clean in that way. Yeah, Exactly. The header on a resume on the left, yep, the one on the right was easier to read. Absolutely. So yes, another question we have recently, I've heard the suggestion to remove physical address from the name section at the top. I have started doing that. I've just started using city and state. Um, that's more comfortable to me. I think that's really all someone needs to know. They don't necessarily need to know where exactly your house is located, or your apartment, or your condo, or wherever you're living. So I've just kind of moved myself to city and state and zip code, and that's really it. So it's definitely a preference thing. Employers, at least when I'm reviewing resumes, I don't do anything with that, but I can see every employer. So other people might, and so that's a really great thing to point out. Yeah. And if anybody else has any other thoughts about your physical address in your resume, definitely stick that in the chat box. I think that's something that we're seeing more and more variation in, for sure. Great. All right, well, let's move along, and we can certainly come back later if you have questions. All right. So a cover letter. So your cover letter is where you get to say where you didn't get to say what you wanted to say in your resume, if that makes sense. So your cover letter really showcases how your unique combination of skills and experiences come together to make you a really great candidate for the position. So it's where you can really link your knowledge, your experience, and your abilities with those very specific needs that the employer has listed in the job description. It shows that you have, when you really link what you can do with what the job wants, it really shows the employer that you have researched the company, that you understand the employer's job requirements, and that you know what you're getting into, basically, right? It's, you know that you're going to be adding value to this position, and this is why. And so I like to say that the cover letter is where you get to explore a little bit in more detail, where you wouldn't in your resume, how you have come to those accomplishments in your job that really make you a great candidate for that particular job. It's a little bit of storytelling on your behalf. It's kind of, you're able to expand a little bit on your story of who you are and what you bring to the table, and how you're a great candidate for that position. And cover letters are really important. Sometimes that's where we get a lot of really important nuggets that we wouldn't have gotten from the resume. So I do read those as an employer. So again, there is a little bit of a formula to doing a cover letter. So you want to have contact details of the person that you're applying to. If you have that available, definitely do some digging on the website or in the job description, so that you are addressing your cover letter to the right people, to the right company. And then don't forget to put your own details towards the bottom as well, or wherever it makes sense within that cover letter, so that they can contact you if that's the only document that they have. So really a good idea to make sure that you are putting the right employer with the right job description. So I have had cover letters where folks have written that they are applying for a job that's not the job that they're applying to with me. So definitely make sure, if you're doing multiple job searches, that you're being very careful about putting the right employer into the right letter for the right job. So once you have the contact information and the details for the company and the position that you're applying to, you have your salutation section. And so this is your hello. This is where you put, I'm applying for this job in your organization, right? So making sure you get that correct. And you might want to be a little bit more specific than you normally would. If you know who the hiring person is at that organization, you will say, dear, their specific name. Sometimes you don't know that information, and so I have seen cover letters where they say, dear hiring committee, dear search committee, but if you can get the specific person that you know is going to be reading or reviewing these resumes, or the head of HR, definitely put them there. And so then the opening, I'm applying for this job, the specific job, here's why, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. And so then you have your main body of the cover letter, and those are, a couple paragraphs. And so, you want to talk about why are you a good fit? What do you bring to this position? What are the skill sets and accomplishments that you have that are transferable? You want to talk about why the company or the organization might be a good fit for you. Do you identify with their values? Do you identify with the way they do business? Do you like their business model? Why are you two a good fit for each other? And so definitely highlight in those 3 paragraphs, skills and attributes that you bring, your capabilities, why this is a good fit for you, why the job and the agency is a good fit for each other with you, and then your closing. So your closing, you want to sort of detail how you will follow up and why they should choose you for a future interview. So I will be in touch. If you need to reach me, here's my information. I'm really looking forward to discussing how I can add value to your organization. Looking forward to discussing how I can be a great team member with your organization. So lots of different ways to do a closing, but that's where you want to wrap it up, give that last little hook about why they should choose you. Be strong in saying that you will follow up, give your contact information again where they can reach you, and then do a nice signature. Is it okay to call the company to find out if you don't know who to address the letter to? Yeah, I think it's fine. We've had people do that with us before, personally, so don't stress about it. Definitely if you go down a couple avenues and you still can't figure it out, you can do one of those generic dear hiring committee, dear search committee, or whatever makes sense for that position. It's a great question. Any other questions in the chat about components of the cover letter? And we'll look at some for sure. All right, so cover letter, good opportunity for you to talk in more detail, get a little bit more personal about what are you bringing to the position, how are you a good fit. Let me tell you a little bit and show you an example of how I've used my skills, how those are transferable to this particular position. Thank you so much for your consideration. I'll be following up. Sincerely, and your name. All right. So here is one version, and I'm going to give us about 15 seconds to read over this, and then I want you to start telling me in the chat what sticks out to you about this particular cover letter. All right. Yes, try not to use to whom it may concern. That's a great one. If you are already addressing your letter to the Human Resources Director, you can say, Dear Human Resources Director. You want to make it as personal as you can. And so even in the absence of someone's name, if you have a position, generally resumes and applications and cover letters go through HR, so I think it's a safe bet to say HR manager, dear HR committee. So yes, that's a great one to point out. That's a great one. This is a little nit, like this is, okay, yes, I will only get to these 2 questions. So this is not something, I've not seen a resume before where at the very top they've got this address, phone number, and the date at the bottom. Typically, I see the date is at the very top, so the date that you're writing the cover letter on. And then you can put your information if you want, but typically I see them the date that you're writing it and then the name and address of the person that you're applying to. So salary desires are mentioned and shouldn't be when trying to land an interview. Absolutely. So I recommend not to talk about salary until you're further down in the process. And in this particular cover letter, you'll see this person says, I now make this and would like that to be this. And so we want to save that information for further into the interview process. Unless they specifically ask for it in the job description. If there's some reason where they say we need to know this. I have seen job descriptions that say, please include in your cover letter your earliest start date. And something like that is absolutely fine. You can say I can start June 1st or whatever the date may be. Some job descriptions will give you very specific directions on what to include. So one of the things that I noticed at the start was it says, I'm writing to apply for a position in your company. And so this could be any position. So how do they know which position you are applying to? So there's an opportunity to be very specific, get really personal with the company. I'm writing to apply for Director of Career Services at Cape Fear Community College. Or if you have a job description with a number, sometimes job descriptions will say, please include this identifier in the cover letter. It's like a job description number. You can put that in parentheses. Definitely be very specific. This just kind of feels like this person didn't really research the company, doesn't know exactly what position they want. So they're just kind of saying, I'm writing to apply for any job. Also, one of the things that I noticed too in this particular cover letter is that they've kind of restated their resume in a way. In this very first paragraph, you'll see that this person says, I've worked in a variety of careers, including at these different things and these date ranges. Those are things that are already in your resume. So someone can definitely look at your resume and they can see where you worked and when. You want to really make your cover letter be an opportunity to talk about the experiences or skill sets you gained from those positions or jobs. So definitely don't restate your resume in the cover letter. Try to make the cover letter be that storytelling about how you've grown, the skills you've acquired, the accomplishments that you've had in those particular positions. So this is a great point. Patrick says, don't talk about being frustrated in your current job or talk badly about them. So this person says, I'm frustrated in my career. And that just signals to an employer that, that this may not be a good fit. They can't really tell, are you a positive person? Are you a negative person? Are you going to come into the organization, not trusting them or not liking the position? So it's not a great idea. And please don't put in your cover letter that you're frustrated or that your current employer or previous employer was bad, because if you get a job there and leave there, you're going to talk badly about that employer as well. So really try to leave that out of your cover letter. Yes, talk about how you can specifically be an asset for that organization. What value added are you bringing? Are you bringing a new way of solving a problem? Are you bringing a new skill set? Are you bringing a new, you really like to influence culture? I mean, like, what is the value added, the asset that you're going to be bringing to that company? That's a great point, Patrick. And again, the last paragraph is not great. So it's a little bit passive. It's actually a lot passive. Please look over my resume. If you might have a job for me, please give me a call. I'm sure whoever's reading this doesn't have time to do the job search for this person, which is kind of what that last paragraph says. The last paragraph is kind of asking the employer to do the job search for them, and to say, keep me in your back pocket if you have anything. And employers are super busy, HR departments super busy. They're probably going to slide this one right off to the side, and not give it much thought. So we've definitely dissected this cover letter. We've seen things that we would do differently. We've seen things that we should not put in cover letters. And so let's see what a different one looks like. So take a couple seconds, about 10 or 15 seconds, to look this over, and let me know in the chat, what do you find appealing about this? What stands out as being a really great cover letter? All right, so right off the bat, this, exactly, Cindy, I was going to say the same thing. This is a really clean cover letter. It's very pleasing to the eye. It's very well organized. It has all the things in the right places, right? All the parts are there. One of the things that a couple of you have mentioned is that there's a really good hook in that first paragraph, where this applicant says, I'm a longtime admirer of the great work you've been doing here, and I'm really excited to submit this application. That's a great way to start a cover letter. It shows that you've done some research, you know who the company is, that you're really dedicated and paying attention to the job. They say that I'm applying for this entry-level position. This is where I saw it. Great idea to put if you saw it on LinkedIn, if you saw it on Indeed, if you saw it on the company's website. That's a great thing to put in there, so that folks know where they're getting hits on their job postings. And it can help also just internally when folks are thinking about which things did they post where and how long they've been up. Yes. Great point. In the middle paragraph is a super, super, super important piece of a cover letter. When you can quantify your results, something that you've done, instead of saying, well, we increased, our membership base. If you can say, we increased membership base from 10 to 12%, that's a very specific accomplishment that you've made. It's something that people can really sink their teeth into. Excellent point. Anytime you can quantify your success, results that you've had, definitely put those in there. In this letter, they show that they've had responsibility for troubleshooting, they've assisted with maintenance, they've installed things, they've improved their ticket response time by 12%. Those are all very specific, measurable accomplishments and achievements that really catch an employer's eye. Also, they say in the next paragraph that they've done their research, they've looked into the company, and they know that they're wanting to expand this particular service. And so here's another thing that I've done that relates to that part of the job description or the company in general. So adding those extra things where you know you can be an asset and bring value added to that position is great. It's definitely missing the date, so that might be something that you want to make sure that you put on there, just so that they know that you're within whatever time frame that they've put on there for applications. And they say at the end, I've attached my resume, it details these things. Thank you for your time and consideration. You can consider putting in there, you can call me at this number. Here's my personal email address. You could add those things if you want, but they've done a really nice job, I think, overall with this cover letter. Anything else about the cover letter that stands out to you that you can see or would add to it? It's a pretty good one. It's a great example. Oh, and for this one, I should say, they already have at the top their contact information, so I wouldn't put it back in again. But if you're someone who doesn't do that big header, then you might want to put your contact information within the text in the bottom of the letter. And some people prefer to have this header on all of their documents, some don't. That's a preference thing. As an employer, I'm fine either way. It's clean, it's all there, all the things that I need are there, so I'm good if you have it there or if you have it somewhere else within the resume or the cover letter. Great, great, great. All right, well, if there are no other questions, here are your contact folks at Cape Fear that will be helping you with this, and I hope this has been a good refresher for those who need a little recap, or a new session for those who are new to the resume and cover letter world. But these are great folks that can help you, and if you stick to those formulas, you'll be good to go. Oh, that's a great question. So our friend says the job that they want to apply for is part-time. How can I ask them if I want to work full-time later on down the road when I graduate? So one of the ways that you can do that is to say, I'm looking forward to this job that's currently part-time. I would definitely be interested if there are more opportunities, down the road for full-time in this area of work. I really am connected to it. I find it fulfilling. I don't think that's a bad thing to state in there that you would be available later down the road for more work if you can connect it to the why, right? So instead of connecting it to the money piece, which I think is what we said a little bit earlier turns people off, if you can say, I would love to just, be more connected to the work, right? Like, this is fulfilling, this is where I want my career to go, and I can start here now, would love to do this later, and I'll have these credentials that would allow me to do that or have more time in that particular position. So I think it's fine as long as you can connect it to the why piece of the job description and what you're doing. I don't know if any of the other folks from Cape Fear have different perspectives on that. You can definitely stick those in the chat box. Yeah, I think it's totally fine to say this is where you are now. Down the road, you'd love to do this because you're connected to the company, the position, etc. You can definitely ask that in the interview. Yep. Yes, Patrick, that's exactly the word I was looking for. Opportunities for growth. Yep.